Well, hello again. Since this thing did not work in the last video, or the first video, I hooked everything up and I got just a little bit of hum out of the speaker. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last video, but the volume would take it. I could control it. I could turn it on and control it, and it would get about to like number 9, 8.5 or 9 on the volume control, and then it would fade away. Then I would go back this way, and it would fade away again right around the 1.5 mark. So, you know, at least I was getting some sound. I was getting some control out of the volume, but it didn't. Other than that, it was nothing. Zero. The S meter wasn't working. Nothing. The lights came on. That was kind of nice, and the tubes lit up. That was kind of nice too. Anyway, I decided maybe I better dig out the old orange pen, the felt tip pen, and check all of the connections going all the way down to the electrolytic capacitors. And that's exactly what I did. And everything checked out good. Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. Everything was fine. And what I had here was I had 342 volts coming out of the electrolytics, and I had it at that point right there. 342 volts there, which meant I should have had along that line up until this resistor right here. I should have had 342 volts on this side of that resistor. Okay? And I should have had some voltage. If that resistor was good, I should have had 300 and some voltage over here. Now we go to the big schematic. Well, you'll see I have it circled in pencil. Yeah, I had, go over here, make sure we're all on the same sheet of music here. I had 311 volts up to here, that resistor. And then on the other side of the resistor, I had about 306, I think, or 304. Well, that's strange. I mean, apparently that's good, because if this wasn't working, none of this would be working. Now, why am I even looking at this right here? Well, I'll tell you, I tested all the voltages on the plates and on the screen grids throughout the entire radio. Every single one. I wrote them all down. When I got to number V1, which is the RF tube, the plate voltage was 0, and the screen grid voltage was 0. A little focus here, maybe a little too close. I should have had 300 and some volts here, a little less voltage over here. The only thing I had was heater voltage. The tube was lighting up. All the other voltages had disappeared. And I just said, wait a minute, how can this be? You know, what is causing that? I got voltage on both sides of this resistor. But by the time I get over here and go through this resistor and on up, I get nothing. And then of course the plate voltage here comes out of this wafer switch from that same line. Well, it's kind of interesting. So right now I'm thinking, well, I'll bet you that it might have something to do with that wafer switch. Wrong. I cleaned it and cleaned it and cleaned it. Had perfect contact on everything. Still no voltage. What is that? Now, there's a resistor right here. That's R9. That's only a 6 ohm resistor. It goes into this set of coils right here. And I had voltage from here to nowhere. I needed to get voltage somewhere in this circuit over here, but before this resistor. I couldn't stick it up here or over here. I had to get it in this line somewhere before the resistor. But I had voltage here, no voltage here. Well, what does that mean? Well, I've had this problem before. I've seen it. There was a break in the wire somewhere in the radio between this resistor and this resistor here. So I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? What do I do now? It was difficult. Where it was located was up in the middle of a bunch of crap. You couldn't get to it with your meter. You couldn't get to it with your soldering iron. What do you do? So I jumpered a wire from here to there, just to see what would happen. Son of a gun, all my voltages came back on V1. So the break was in here somewhere, okay? And because it was obviously the wire was good from here on around, but it was bad from here to there. And I didn't want to tear all the wires out. Just why? There's nothing there but a wire. So I contacted Brendan. I said, what I want to do is put a jumper there. It's against my, my druthers. I would rather have had the ability to remove this wire, find out where it was, replace it with a wire, blah, blah, blah. So, but putting a jumper from here to here did exactly the same thing. It accomplished the same goal. I just bypassed this little section. Now, it's a little section on the schematic, but it was pretty long in the chassis. So I jump it across, all the voltages lit up. I got 300 and something here and on the plate, and 300 and something here on the, I think it was 298 on the, can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was 298 or something like that on the screen grid. Well, I felt really good about that. Holy mackerel, I got all my voltages back. All the tubes are good. Turned on the radio, I was all fired up. I got it all set up, and I turned on the receiver, and nothing. And the voltages were good. Everything was good. Voltages here and across that resistor were good. Everything was good coming out of the electrolytics. What now, Well, guess what? Right at that particular time, don't ask me why, but V2 over here decided not to light. No filament voltage. It was lit, previously, then all of a sudden it decided not to light here. I don't understand that. And you'll see I circled again right here to figuring it might be this resistor had wiped out or something. And I went down there and I checked this again. I checked this switch. It was the section 3 on the front. Everything was good. Got my voltages here. I kept going back to make sure I had voltages here. I was kind of, you get kind of gun shy after a while, Still nothing. It wouldn't light up. Well, I couldn't figure that one out. So I thought about it till the next day. I tested all the voltages, and to see if there was anything there. There was some stuff coming in, but the tube just wouldn't light up. So that kind of told me that it's not the voltage. It's got to have something to do with the tube, and it has to do with the filaments. The plates, it wouldn't be the plate, it wouldn't be the grids, it's got to be the filaments. So you go down here this side of the schematic, and you see you'll see this a lot. You'll see that on the schematics they'll have a tendency to take all of the filament and heater voltages and put them all together in one spot on the schematic so you can easier to work with. It's not always that way. Anyway, the filament for V2 would be pin 2 and pin 7. So I measured pin 7 and I had 6.5 volts coming in here. So I had voltage coming in, but I had nothing coming out. There was no connection between here and ground. I said, wow, it's just a bad solder joint. I can fix that. So I went ahead and I put a little flux up in there, reached up in there real careful with my soldering iron. I barely had room, I'm talking about everything underneath this thing right here. This is a box on top of the chassis. Man, everything is crammed up under there. You can't hardly get to it. It's terrible. I'm just glad that I didn't have too many other problems like that in that box. Anyway, I soldered it up real good. I put some flux on it to make sure I got a good, solid soldering job right there. Washed it all off with alcohol when I got done. And then I turned on the radio. Now, of course, this was all done with the power off. You understand that. You don't never go underneath the chassis and poke around unless you know exactly what you're doing. You usually have the power off unless you're taking plate voltages and things like that. Turn the radio back on, and guess what? The tube still didn't light. Yeah, I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's a perfect soldering job down there. So, well, maybe I didn't solder far enough back on the pin to the bottom of the socket. Maybe there's something wrong with the pin, between the bottom of the socket and the grounding point where it was soldered. So I went under there again. I resoldered, a little more flux, cleaned it all up, looked really good. Turned it on, and this time, same thing. No filament. So I reached out. I said, man, this is not happening. So I went ahead and hooked up my little gator wire again. And I reached under there and I touched that new solder joint that I had, or not a new one, but that retouched solder joint that looked really nice and shiny. I resoldered there in pin 3 of that tube, and the tube lit up. Took it away. The filament shut down. Lit up, shut down. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, every time I touched it with the screwdriver, just barely touched it. It was the strangest thing. It would light up the tube and then it would go out. Light up the tube. I said, this is really getting to me. I resoldered and resoldered 3-4 times around that entire base of that tube socket, and it did absolutely nothing. So I said, what I'm going to do, I am sick of this mess. I'm so close to getting this radio operational. So what I did was just take another jumper wire. This radio should be called the jumper set. Anyway, I just took another jumper wire. This thing didn't want to cooperate. I found a close by grounding point and I just ran a wire straight there and soldered it in, and the tube lit up. All was well in River City. Don't ask me. I don't know how that thing happened like that. I've had solder joints that, you know, you retouch them up 2-3 times, they finally work. This one didn't touch up at all. Alright, so now I had bolt tubes lit, but the voltage is good on bolt tubes. Now what else did I have? Well, I had put in a new power cord. I tested all the tubes on my tube tester. They all tested good. I have new electrolytics in. I replaced any bad resistors with new ones. The coils were all tested good. Voltages were good on all the tubes. The potentiometers were all cleaned and recleaned. Wafer switches were all clean, both sides. Really, really good job, by the way. They were nice and shiny. All the switches were working and good. The antenna connection was good. The audio output transformer on the chassis was good. And of course the one in the speaker is good. And the speaker itself was good. This radio, anytime you have all of that, it has to work. It has to work. So, how about a little square dance music? Well, that'll be it, folks, for this radio. I'm going to clean the chassis with some lacquer thinner. It's not all that dirty, but I want to clean it up. It's just got a lot of dirt on it, that's all. I'm going to clean it all up. You know, clean up as much as I can around the tuner with the brush. You've seen me do it 1,000 times. You've seen other people do it. I plan to install the new fuse in the bottom. I want to put a fuse holder and a fuse in, which I'll do. And then I'll put it all back together. After all that's done, I'll shine up the outside, clean the front, the faceplate, and I'll put, put it back. Before I put it back in the case, I'll paint the case too if it needs to be painted, and that will be it. And we will get the next project on the bench. Until next time, this is John.